In this video, we're taking a look at GoCollect's hottest comics for the week of February 24th. Looks like moderns are leading the way. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. It's Monday, and you know what that means. We're taking a look at GoCollect's hottest comics for the week of February 24th. Now, for those who don't know, GoCollect puts together a weekly article that analyzes the hottest selling comic books based on volume of sales and movement in the market. So like I like to do, let's take a look at this list and see what's trending. But before I get into the books, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing all those things, I would appreciate it. And of course, I will put a link in the description if you guys want to do further reading. You guys know the drill. This article is written by Matt Tuck. He will have his analysis if you guys want to read the article, but I will give you my analysis here as well. So starting at the number 5 spot, let's get right into it. And this one, of course, is a really cool book, one that I'm sure all of us know. This is Something is Killing the Children, number 1, 8th printing, up 24 spots, sitting in the 36th spot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, you guys know this would be the 8th printing of the famed storyline for Something is Killing the Children that came out last year in 2020, written by James Tynion. Now, of course, Something is Killing the Children kind of took over the comic book collecting world by storm when it originally came out. I mean, when we're talking about 8th printings showing up on hot lists, you know that this is a comic series that the people really want to get their hands on. And it really is unprecedented when you think about it, but it feels like this was just the perfect storm, lightning in a bottle sort of situation. You had a super hot writer with James Tynion coming out with a super badass, indie series through, Boom Studios, who was on a total tear at the time when they were releasing a bunch of properties like this one and Berserker. And then on top of that, you sort of had the peak of the COVID pandemic where the comic book market was absolutely on fire. So it was just like a whole slew of events that kind of led to like the perfect storm of this book here coming out and everybody wanting to jump on it. Now, of course, we're talking about the 8th printing here, and we're talking about volume of sales. Now, it's funny because last week I had made 2 videos, one about 2nd printings and 3rd printings, and the other about the next best thing. And it feels like, Something is Killing the Children with these, volume of comic book series here and these 8th printings. This is a situation where people are really viewing this as like, well, I can't get my hands on the first one because it's too expensive. Can't get my hands on the 2nd printing because it's too expensive. I'll just keep going down the line until it actually fits my budget. And that's where the 8th printing comes in. So, people really value the series. People want those next best things that are possible to them. And based on where this comic book actually sits in terms of its values, make it a really attractive purchase overall. So as we can see, the 9.8s, there's 3,200 on the census, fair market value around the $70 range, although 30-day moving is only $44. So again, a book that, people are probably thinking, hey, I can pick this up really low key on the cheap. Here's a bid on eBay that went for $31. It's a great series. It seems to be going nowhere. There's a launch of House of Slaughter. Feels like we're going to expand on this universe. And this is just on the comic book side of things. I mean, who knows what the values of this comic book could be, once we actually get a property on Netflix or, some kind of movie adaptation or whatever the case may be. So I think a lot of people are looking at those numbers, on the dip. They're thinking to themselves, hey, if I can get a 9.8 slab of anything at $30, I might as well roll the dice on a great series like Something is Killing the Children, number 1, 8th printing, which is the 5th hottest comic of the week. All right, let's go on now to the 4th hottest comic of the week. And the 4th hottest comic of the week is another hot comic written by the same author. This is The Nice House on the Lake, number 1, up 31 spots, sitting in the 55th slot. And then what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first issue of the series Nice House on the Lake, again, written by James Tynion, that came out in 2001 by DC Comics. And this is just another example of a super hot situation where we have one of the hottest writers in comic books coming up with a great storyline, awesome artwork, and just a perfect storm of things leading to everybody wanting to hop on this title. I think when you have hot writers like James Tynion doing excellent work and excellent indie series, we can all make an assumption that they're probably having talks in Hollywood. So any book or any series that James Tynion is working on is going to have speculative value in the market. And that's one of the reasons why people are always going to, think to jump on those books. Now, this one right here, as to why it's getting hot recently in this week, it seems to be that this is actually one of those situations situation where the book has actually had a pretty decent correction, and that's one of the reasons why people are starting to jump back on it. So here we see 9.8's fair market value around the $120 range, $1,600 on the census, but you can see 30-day moving, only $62. So, a book that probably when it came out got super, super hot right out of the gate. People were probably buying up those pre-screen 9.8s at the $120 range. And then now here we are, flash forward, a few months, and we can see that this book is actually sliced in half. So this is a situation where it feels like maybe this book has kind of fallen a little bit out of favor. People get kind of tired waiting for the speculation to come to fruition, and those prices start to go down. But then now you have the market thinking, hey, that's a great floor price, a great entry point for a book. Let me hop on this thing because I still believe that Nice House on the Lake might have some potential in the future. All right, let's go on now to the third hottest comic of the week. And the third hottest comic of the week is one that we actually talked about not too long ago, but this one is Star Wars: The High Republic #1, up 34 spots, sitting in the 49th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first issue of the Star Wars High Republic series that came out in 2021, written by Cavan Scott. Now, this, of course, is a Star Wars property that featured the first appearances of a lot of new characters within the High Republic era. And one of the reasons why people were so high on this book is that there has been talks amongst Disney and the Star Wars Lucasfilm enterprise that they were thinking of doing maybe a trilogy of movies or maybe a Disney Plus series on the High Republic era. And when this book came out, it was, sort of expected that, hey, this is probably going to be the comic book framework to lay the foundation for the lore that we would expect to see in that Star Wars High Republic TV show. So right out of the gate, this book was a super hot one in the market. But like things do, out of sight, out of mind, this book definitely had its correction, kind of like how I was saying with Nice House on the Lake. But now, kind of coming off the Book of Boba Fett with a lot of the Star Wars books getting hot in that cycle, it feels like a lot of people are, thinking about Star Wars once again, which to me makes a lot of sense because this was a fun read in my opinion. And it also is just a good book to get your hands on. There's a lot of speculative opportunity on this. And of course, there's a lot of great first appearances just in this title alone. And as we look at the 9.8s here, we'll see that there are 2,300 on the census, fair market value sitting around the $80 range, 30-day moving, however, around the $91 range. So again, not too expensive of a book if it's something you want to get your hands on, but probably one that is heating up, as recently as this week because of the fact that, people are thinking Star Wars and there was that correction. Coming out of the gate last year in 2021, this was a book that was hitting that $100 plateau probably easily. And then it kind of dipped back down, and now it's kind of on its way back up. So again, a book that probably people kind of forgot a little bit about, but now is starting to pick back up in the market. All right, let's go on now to the second hottest comic of the week. And the second hottest comic of the week is another sort of speculative comic book, sort of like the ones that we saw here, and another modern one. This one, of course, is Strange Academy #1, up 51 spots, sitting in the 46th spot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first appearance of the Strange Academy and all of the characters that came with the Strange Academy, a book that was written in 2020 by Scotty Young. Now, in case you guys don't know, think of Strange Academy as basically Doctor Strange, Harry Potter, where Doctor Strange has basically taken in all of these sort of young, aspiring magic users, and they kind of run a school for all these characters. And, I think one of the reasons why when this book came out and everybody was really excited about it is when you think about, that Young Avengers #1, and we think about all the characters that made their first appearance just in that book alone, and then we think about the values that that book now commands today and the potential of what those characters might be eventually in the MCU with, the MCU sort of laying the foundation for all of them to come. I think a lot of people sort of viewed this book right here, Strange Academy #1, as like a potential Young Avengers type situation where this would be the foundation for a lot of characters that would get really, really popular in comic books, in Marvel comic books, and then eventually make their way onto the, screen in the MCU. And I think, it's not a coincidence that, with the excitement of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, people are thinking about all those Doctor Strange books, everything in the market for Doctor Strange is getting hot. It makes a lot of sense that Strange Academy #1 would sort of pick up steam, so to speak. Now, I don't really think that we're going to get any appearances of the characters in this book to make their way into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, but I do think that people are thinking, hey, if Doctor Strange is going to be a main character in the MCU for many years, if we're building out the Doctor Strange universe, it certainly leads to the possibility that some of these kids could eventually make their way into the MCU. And as as we dig into the numbers, we'll actually see that that is kind of the case as far as like people thinking about this book and its potential. We can see here 9.8s, 1,500 on the census. Fair market value is 325, but 30-day moving, however, is 417. So definitely a book that is actually getting pretty hot in the market. You can see it's actually had a pretty steady increase over the course of, the last, say year and a half or so. And this is kind of a good example of a book that, even with the 2021 comic book market and everything setting new record high prices, this book right here is still on the increase overall. So it's definitely people thinking, hey, what are the potential ceilings with a book like this? And now people are, easily spending around that $400 range. I mean, here's a book that went for basically $500. So Strange Academy, #1, one of the hottest books on the list this week due to the fact that people are thinking about this team, the potential in the future, and also, excited about the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness movie. All right, let's go on now to the hottest comic of the week. And the hottest comic of the week is one that I think is so deserving to be the hottest comic of the week. And this one right here is New Teen Titans Annual #2, up 56 spots, sitting in the 44th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first full appearance of the character known as Vigilante, a book written by George Perez that came out in 1983. Now, in case you guys haven't been watching Peacemaker, I won't go into too many details with the show, but all you need to know is that Vigilante is a character that made their debut in the James Gunn Peacemaker show, and he was definitely at least a personal favorite of mine, probably a fan favorite of a lot of people who watched the show. And I think, for obvious reasons, this book has now gotten pretty hot in the market as far as like people, becoming new fans of the Vigilante character. And it really does open up like a whole new conversation of, should we value characters just because they make an appearance on a TV show or just because they make an appearance in a movie? And I think this is an interesting discussion because I think there's some comic collectors that sort of feel like it's silly to, spec on a character who presumably you had no interest in before they actually made an appearance in a TV show. But on the other side of that, I really do think like sometimes it takes a, TV show or a cartoon or a movie or whatever to convert you into a fan. We only have so much bandwidth with our comic book reading that sometimes we just don't know if a character is going to interest us or not. And sometimes it takes that property to get us, excited to read some of the comic books. So New Teen Titans Annual #2, a book that has definitely gotten hot because I think a lot of people are now Vigilante fans. And this book is really interesting because unlike the MCU, it feels like this book actually got more and more hot throughout the course of the show to where it's actually now the hottest it's been, even after we got the show's conclusion. And I think it's really interesting to think about that in terms of how the DC books move as opposed to the MCU books. Because I think with the MCU books, week to week, they get really, really hot and then people kind of get on the other end of things and then they dump those books. Whereas this book right here, it feels like it took a little bit of momentum for it to reach its sort of peak fervor and peak prices. And if we look at the 9.8s here, we can see fair market value was $300. 30-day moving, however, is $350. So even in the last 90 days, this has been a book that continues to get hot even after we're on the other end of the show. And you can see even week to week, I think Peacemaker actually made its debut in December and, it was selling around $300. And then throughout the last couple months, like say January and February, it has continually gone up from month to month with each episode. And I think it's really interesting to think about that. It says a lot about, people's faith in the DC universe, in the DC properties. Now, I won't go into what happened in the final episode, but, I'll just say this. It feels like the future with DC is looking pretty bright, and it feels like we might have more consistency with some of the properties that we're getting, through HBO and through Warner. And I think that gives people a lot of faith that if they invest their money into a book like this, that they will actually start to see some returns, not only just on the financial level, but also on sort of the emotional level. That, if I'm watching this show, it's going to lead to some other show. And then, my, investment as far as a fan is concerned is actually going to go somewhere. Well, that is all I have for this video. Those were the hottest comics for the week of February 24th. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next video.